I want to take time to explain in detail the assignment in Module 2 where you're going to begin your thematic unit. Throughout the class, we are going to walk through lesson planning a thematic unit and using the literacy standards and quality literacy instruction. And so to start, we have a mapping activity that we're going to do. Your textbook provides several examples of this in the reading for Module 2. And we're going to take that structure, but we're going to change it just a little bit for our purposes to be a little more methodical. And I think less overwhelming. You look at a template where you're actually planning days, and to me, that isn't a good way to start. But let me say this. Unit planning and planning in general becomes a very personal process. In your classes here at Allen, we're going to walk through a way that we find as faculty here to be beneficial. However, eventually you will tweak this and make it your own. So I'm giving you templates that you're going to have to fill out, but if this doesn't make sense to you and you have a way that works better, but the outcome is still the same, which means you have identified quality activities, a high quality theme, and connected it to early learning standards, that's what matters. So I'm trying to help break this down so it's not too overwhelming, but you have to eventually make this your own. So if you're completely lost, walk through step by step like I do here. But if you're not lost and you're used to planning and you feel very comfortable with your way, that is okay as long as the outcome is the same. And the outcome is quality activities connected to Kansas Early Learning Standards under the umbrella of a quality theme. But your quality has to match what I have identified as being quality. Tara Aswell, a former adjunct in Module 2, explains to you in a video how to come up with a good theme and identifying good themes. Alphabet is not a good theme. Animals is not a good theme. It's too broad. And so we're going to walk through that today. And so I thought the best way to do this is to take the template as you see here and actually show you my completed template, or mostly completed. You'll see I'm lacking a few things, but I really wanted to get this lecture out today. So I am choosing, I'm going to go back up to the top here, my month for this theme is March, and this is a whole month that I'm thinking to use this theme for. I would strongly urge you in preschool classrooms and toddler classrooms to not do week themes, but to think of a whole month. And then within that month, you break it down into focus areas or subtopics for each week. But that way, over the course of a month, you're creating a nice, strong strand, an opportunity to revisit the same ideas and concepts. You're not just focusing on farm animals for an entire month, but perhaps it's farming is your theme, because then you can talk about animals, you can talk about crops, you can talk about plants and you could do flowers one week and vegetables and edible plants another week. You could do flowers and herbs. You could do farms in Kansas versus farms in Africa. So you can take a month-long topic and really break it down into fun and interesting ways to really get the depth that is necessary in rich preschool opportunities and experiences. And let me say that again, it's the qualifying word here is rich. It's a rich experience. It's not just a basic, stereotypical preschool experience. And that's what takes programs from being good to being great. So I'm choosing the month of March. March is often a time when we start to grow foods again and plant our gardens, but I'm not going to go with the typical theme of farming or plants. I'm also going to plan this for a multi-age classroom. I like multi-age, and if I were teaching in a classroom, that's what I would hope I would have, as a multi-age classroom. And I know a lot of you teach in multi-age, and I felt like that one was maybe a little harder to plan for, so I thought I would show what my thematic unit looks like for that. So my topic is to market. How many of you know the fairy tale, to market, to buy a fat pig, home again, jiggity jig? There's a picture book that takes this, and it takes the fairy tale or the finger rhyme and changes it a little bit. And it starts, I'll just give you the start of it. To market, to buy a fat pig, home again, jiggity jig. To market, to buy a red hen, home again. Uh-oh, that pig left the pen. To market, to buy a plump goose, home again. Uh-oh, the hen's on the loose. Okay, so you get, there's a repetition here. There's a pattern. We're learning about, there's all these different farm animals that she's collecting, obviously to cook. Through the pictures, you pick that up. And at the end of the story, she ends up making, she says, forget this, I'm gonna go buy vegetables. She goes, buys vegetables, and makes vegetable soup for everybody for lunch. So my title is to market. My explanation, so why did I choose this topic, is that this month's thematic unit, we will learn about the food we eat, we will learn where it comes from, and how we can make healthy food choices every day. Okay, easy enough, right? So then I walk through my standards. So actually get that standards book that I mailed you. And you'll see here, I have walked through and identified standards. I literally copy and pasted them, and then fixed the little errors, pasted them into this box. You'll notice, like for number 2, I have 2 different standards I've listed, and that's where the multi-age comes into play. I wanted to make sure to emphasize to myself that I wasn't just pinholing the kid. You know, some of my kids are already going to be able to ask and answer questions about unknown words, so they are looking at those words in a text. So something that I'm reading to them, not necessarily in a book where they see pictures. So there's a little difference there, right? And so it's growing that knowledge. And I want to make sure as a teacher that I don't just teach a standard, but that I recognize all my kids are on a continuum somewhere around that standard. So this is like the minimum expectation. And so some of my 3-year-olds, but I also decided that by March, if I'm doing read-alouds like I think I should be doing read-alouds in a classroom, then all my 3-year-olds are going to be ready to talking about character and settings and major events. That I felt like was a realistic goal. But down here, when I'm talking about different texts and comparing the texts, this is an informational text standard. I felt like I needed again to emphasize that continuum to myself. Okay, so here are my 3 standards for communication and literacy. Before I go identify activities that I'm going to do with this book, I have to decide what is my goal, and these standards are related to my goal. They are what is going to drive my goal. And actually, in Module 3 is when we'll actually write the goals for our unit. Previously, you had written goals in this module, and I decided that was too much, and so we're actually going to wait on that activity. All right? So then I go to pages 33 and 34, and the subtopic there of communication and literacy are the standards in foundational skills. And I have to pick out 3 standards. And so I did. I picked out my 3 standards here. So again, this one recognizes that spoken words are represented in written language by specific sequences of letters. Okay. To here, distinguishing whether 2 words rhyme or not, recognizing and producing rhyming words. So when I do the rhyming word activities there as a whole group, when we're doing reading and singing and doing finger rhymes, I'm really going to have a lot of individualized questions to kids and expectations, and trying to get one child just to mimic what I'm doing and another child to fill in the known word that they memorize to hear the rhyme, to another child trying to get them to come up with their own rhyming word to fit into the sentence. So a whole continuum there of where children are, because that's what you're going to have in a classroom. Even a 4-year-olds or just 3-year-olds, you're going to have a whole continuum just like I named. Those that can just mimic what you do, those that can put in the known of what they've learned and memorized and fill that in correctly, and those then that are able to add in their own word correctly that rhymes. You know, maybe it's a nonsense word, but they're getting the gist of the rhyming activities. So again, foundational skills identify 3 standards. And then here in communication and literacy with writing, again, 3 different standards. So I'm going to imitate shapes. I'm going to try and get kids to do more with their writing. We're going to participate in shared writing activities because we're going to make lots of charts about what's your favorite food. Do you like soup or do you like spaghetti, pasta? You know, would you rather have a steak or a salad? That kinds of things. Do you prefer hamburger or chicken nuggets? So we're going to have lots of different kinds of charts that we are going to keep track of. Your favorite fruit. And then we'll write simple sentences together maybe, or stories. And we're going to integrate this in our name work. It's March. Some of my kids are getting ready to leave the classroom and become kindergartners, and some of them, and by kindergarten you really want those kids writing their first and last name. And so we're going to be having a lot of opportunities for the children in a multiple times in a day for them to be writing their name. It doesn't mean I'm giving direct instruction to any of those kids or they're just going to copy their name, but I'm going to give them real meaningful times to use their name, to write it, or to write each other's names. So, lots of realistic play and meaningful experiences. Communication and literacy, 1 standard from speaking and learning, and so I identify that standard. Emphasizing here my communication and literacy language standards. So you'll notice here, these are the subtopics within your standards. These are the phrases that are on the left-hand side at the very far left of that column of the chart, the language standards. Then I leave communication and literacy, and we actually walk through the standards in order. So 1 standard for approaches to learning. These are the additional standards that we will be addressing through the unit in our activities. So I need to make sure that I have activities that are really trying to work on children's attention spans. This one is a very logical connection, demonstrates basic understanding that eating a variety of foods helps the body grow and be healthy. Natural connection there, right? Now, one thing to keep in mind, are you addressing other approaches to learning? Are you going to be addressing persistence as well as attention span? Yes, of course. Are we going to be playing games that include gross motor skills? Yes, of course. But the difference is this is my focus. This is what I'm really honing in on and being very explicit in my connection of activities. Okay? Same for math. Yes, we'll be writing numbers. Yes, we'll be counting. But my activities that we have in centers, in my math center, and that I really want to emphasize in the science center are going to focus on weight and measurement of fruits and vegetables, steaks, ounces, sizes of meat. How much is a serving? And then sorting our foods based upon, what kind of food is it? Is it a protein? Is it a vegetable? Is it a fruit? Is it a grain? Well, the colors, the seeds, the shape, the size, where it's grown, etc., etc. So those are my areas of emphasis. Yes, I'm doing lots of other math standards during the month, but this is what I'm measuring and this is what I'm focusing on and making sure I have a specific connection throughout each week on these standards. I only pick 1 for social studies or science, and I chose science. Thought that makes sense. And then repeated emphasis for my creative arts experiences. And I only have to have one standard here, and I actually went ahead and did 2 standards. Because I decided, with rhyming, I'm playing with words and I'm doing songs and finger plays. That's going to be a major emphasis of my monthly theme here. But then in art form, I thought I would recognize various art forms: sculpture, painting, printing, and then drawings suggest real life. We're going to work on that as well. Okay, so I'm actually going to take this one. It's because I feel like it's very straightforward and will make a lot of sense to you. Okay, so those are my 2 standards that I'm emphasizing for creative arts, right? Okay, so now I'm going to scroll down. So art forms, suggesting you're trying to help the drawings become more real life-like, okay? And rhyming, songs, finger plays. So I actually need to come back down here and write in my 5 finger plays, right? Yes, I do, and I haven't done that yet. But here, look here under my 3 creative experiences or 3 art center ideas. So number 1, food paint prints. Cut foods in half and cross sections and allow children to use them as stamps. What kind of art form is that like? Go back up here. It's recognized and describes various art forms: sculpture, painting, printing. Right? So actually, with this same thing, I'm actually going to add yet another, well, here I have it actually. Didn't really even intend to, but I did. Sculpting. We're going to sculpt with icing and dough bags. Because have you ever tried to ice a cake with those dough bags, with the icing bags, with the tips, the fancy tips? It can be really hard to get that icing through. If it's really hard to do that, what muscles are you building? You're building your fine motor skills. You're really developing that. It's going to be messy and dirty, but those kids are really going to be naturally engaged in trying to make a flower and trying to make like a ribbon draping banner, a garland with the icing. So I'm going to show them some simple things and now you try it. And it's not going to be on a real cake for now in the art center. It'll be on cardboard here. As I said, I'm going to have pre-cut out pieces of cardboard circles, almost like a cupcake top is what in my mind what I'm thinking. But you could do rectangles too. You're just giving them a nice flat surface. So could you use paper plates? Totally do paper plates. If you wanted kind of a dome for them, you could use a bowl, a styrofoam or paper bowl. That way it could harden and go home. Or you could use plastic bowls or glass bowls and stick them in a tub of soapy water at the end, and whoosh, the art goes away. But then the next day they can make all these others. So it's about the process. It's not about the end product. It's about them trying to use their fine motor skills and develop those while making the art. Food prints, cutting that, making art pictures. So you could use paint. You could use pudding if your center allows you to use food and it's not played with. And then study of still lifes. So, I'm going to bring in one of my teacher sources. Up here I have to identify 5 resources or websites. My first one is an art-based thematic unit on marketplaces. And so I want to show the children some paintings of still lifes. And that might be one week. And then the next week might be some farm pictures and paintings. And so then I would create, even though it's not really a still life, but I would create a scene for them of, a barn and the cow and maybe a little wagon. So simple. And let them practice trying to draw what they see. And all the kids, because then we could talk about perspective. If you sit here, what do you mostly see? Well, if you sit on the other side, what do you see that's different from what the other child saw? And compare their pictures. And you're going to have some kids where you're not going to be able to tell it's a barn and a cow and a wagon. And there's going to be other kids where you're going to be able to see the barn and you're going to see the wagon, but that cow's going to look funny. And that's okay. You're giving them a goal. You're allowing each child to come to it and come to the activity where they are. They're all working on copying. They're all working on perspective. They're all learning about art. They're all really being able to use their strength and start where they are, rather than make an animal figure that looks like your animal figure and just copy what you gave them and that's perfect and already cut out. They're going to make it their own, and they're all being challenged at their level. So I've allowed for an intense level of differentiation and personalization of the learning. So that's just a really specific example here of how you can see how my creative arts standards are directly tied to these ideas here that I have. The writing center, I'm going to have adding machine tape because they're nice and long, thin pieces of paper, and the kids can cut those off and make grocery lists and pretend to make grocery lists. I'm going to have materials so that they can publish cookbooks as well as, or make their own charts, so chart paper of their favorite foods, and they can go around and ask each other what their favorite foods are, or their favorite fruit, or their fill in the blank related to food. And we're going to have grocery ads. Oh my heavens, I misspelled that. Grocery ads for referencing writing about food and recipes. Math center. We're going to sort foods by variety of characteristics as well as emphasizing categories from my plate. We're going to measure and weigh different foods to compare and contrast, as well as learn about proper portions. So we can measure, I think about all this, we can measure our rice, we can measure our potatoes, we can weigh meat. I could take, for the morning, I could take a steak that I wrap really well or put in a Ziploc bag. You know, I could take a small, inexpensive piece of steak and a small, inexpensive piece of, chicken, and have them weigh them to compare them, and they could measure them. So they could see it, but they wouldn't necessarily have to touch it. And so that would really be important for the children to have that hand-on experience. It's worth the price of the meat and the food that I can't turn around and eat, as long as I make smart choices to learn about size and portions. And so actually here, my other center idea is to add measuring cups, spoons, containers, food scale, and balance scales to explore weight, measurement, and volume, etc. So lots of kind of open-ended exploration there. Dramatic play. I want to emphasize that dramatic play isn't just the children dressing up. Dramatic play is about pretending. It's imaginary play, right? And sometimes it's imaginary play that couldn't be real, and sometimes it's, mimicking real life. And so mimicking real life, let's add a cash register, money, bags, baskets for the children to pretend to go to the market and going to the grocery store. And so we might even, the great fun thing about this book is it's already introducing a new vocabulary word to these kids, because we're talking about market versus grocery store. Different words, right? Richer language. Getting away from this gross motor type of dramatic play, I'm going to create a fine motor type of dramatic play and have a miniature farm with figurines and a big tub where I'm going to put dirt, and I'm going to put fake grass or turf down, and trees and little barns and those little tractors and dirt moving equipment get little rakes, so tiny kinds of, I'm sure a lot of you have seen like the fairy gardens. Well, taking a twist on that and taking these small figurines and adding a setting to them so the children can play in an imaginary way. And then also in the dramatic play area, another week I might add recipes with measurements and simple pictures and words on them, and the fake materials and some manipulatives so that they can pretend to cook. Have cooking shows, right? 3 construction or block ideas. I've got 2 so far. Add farm equipment and animals to the block area. Very simple. And that would probably go month long that I would do that. And probably month long I would have food and animal puzzles. And so now I need to come up with a third one that maybe I don't have month long, but that is there for the whole, just for a week with a particular book. So I still have one to add. Science ideas. So in my science center, I'm going to have lots of vegetables with knives and spoons and magnifying glasses and science journals so the kids can cut them apart and they can investigate them and look what's inside and take those seeds out. If we let children explore these foods, and especially some vegetables that maybe they haven't eaten, a tomatillo, which are the green tomatoes, right? Probably most of our kids haven't had a tomatillo, or they've had salsa verde, but they haven't had the tomatillo. So let them see that tomatillo, and then maybe later I would actually make salsa verde, and we could do that in a small group or as a whole class if they wanted. Same thing with apples. That's a great example. I think we often all, we go to apples and we cut apples apart and we'll do star prints, which are great fun. And, eventually we'll culminate by making applesauce, right? Same idea, but I'm going to take it to new foods that the kids don't know and haven't had experience with. Maybe an eggplant. Kids are likely not to like eggplants, but if we investigate it and play with it, and maybe we cook it up a couple different ways, the children they could taste it raw, they could taste it fried, they could taste it baked. There's different ways we could make it. Same thing with beets. Think about foods that you could expose the children to try and turn them on to these healthy, incredibly vitamin, nutrient-rich fruits and vegetables and foods that they may not like, but, they may probably have really never tried it either. And it just seems odd and different. So really a time to explore and learn about vegetables and fruits and different foods. Sensory exploration with spices and baking items. And then looking at baking soda versus baking powder, the use of heat and cold to change food, chemical reaction versus physical reaction. And yes, I did use the words, and I would use the words with preschoolers, chemical reaction versus physical reaction. Chemical reaction is where something actually changes, when that vinegar and the baking soda mix and bubble up. That's a chemical reaction. Yeast is a chemical reaction. Where a physical reaction is baking cookies. The ingredients are all still there, but what changes is when you add the heat, you've changed them into something new. And that's the cookie. And so that's a physical reaction. I wouldn't test them on the vocabulary, but I would use it and I would talk about what we're seeing, and I would use the appropriate vocabulary so that they would understand that. And eventually they would begin using it, and eventually over the course of a month, they would start talking about things naturally. But it takes the extended time, which is why I strongly argue your thematic units should be a month long, not just a week, but a month long. Listening Center, again, 3 ideas. Recipe books with pictures from around the world, puppets for retelling to market, and then I would come up with a third. I started listing snack ideas, vegetable soup, homemade beef jerky. We could make homemade cookies together, or salsa verde and chips. So a food that they could see how we can change it and make it into something yummy. Because a raw tomatillo is not very yummy. So I walk through each box, completing the assignment, completing that that monthly concept map. Because then we will take this and actually write specific lesson plans. You'll actually write lesson plans for your read aloud, and we'll see how we can take this idea of concepts and take it into a full, break it down then into a week and how you can come up with a week rich thematic unit. If you have questions, do not hesitate to ask. I'm going to make a couple corrections on my sample, and we'll get the additional tips and information up in the module.